Hello! It's Thursday, which means it's once again time for the best movie podcast ever, the only movie podcast which offers objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, Konrad, and with me as always, he's going deeper underground. There's too much panic in this town. It's Anthony James.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Very, very well.
I really leaned into that hello there. That was higher and louder than I intended.
Hello! Eventually you're just going to be like Mrs. Doubtfire. It's going to be...
That's where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Hello!
Yeah. No, I've been good. How about you?
I'm very well. Spurs won a match this week. We're not talking about sport on this podcast. It's not a sport podcast, but Spurs won a match for the first time in what feels like a year. So I'm very happy about that. I can't complain. And I watched a good movie. I watched several good movies, actually. Mm-hmm. One of which we won't be talking about on this podcast. The rest, we may.
Remember that match against Fulham? I thought I'd just bring the football into the movie talk, you know?
We should... we'll do sports movies one day, and we can talk about... Oh, what is his name? Nunez.
Yeah.
Something Nunez. Fulham! Yeah.
Oh, remember that match against Fulham?
He becomes left-footed magically at the end of the movie because he has to score a Laurent Robert free kick, who was also left-footed, despite being right-footed for the rest of the movie.
Who did Tottenham beat, out of curiosity? Not Fulham.
They beat West Bromwich Albion is who they beat. So... take that, Birmingham. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about football or football-related movies this week. No, we're here to talk about monster movies.
We are.
Because I watched the Kong versus Godzilla trailer, and it looked kind of rad, to be honest. So I thought, what better time?
I watched that trailer too, actually. I watched it since we decided to do monster movies.
Yeah.
And I never actually saw the Bryan Cranston Godzilla remake. But
okay.
I have to say... Kong and Godzilla facing each other on like a aircraft carrier or whatever it was looked pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Like you got a big fucking monkey and a lizard that shoots lasers out of its mouth. I'm on board with that, frankly. So before we get into that, next week's show is going to be a movie diary. So I'll remind you at the end of the episode, but be sure to check us out there. Subscribe to us on YouTube at the Culture Cave or on podcasting apps for the best movie podcast ever. Give us a like, get involved in the comments. Please share the show with your friends. It really does help us with getting the engagement out there. But other than that, let's talk about some movies.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I have very arbitrarily constructed a premise for this themed episode on monster movies, which is that we're going to talk about these, I think, chronologically. I think that makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give each of these monsters a rating out of 10. Based on how much destruction they cause, with I guess 10 being kind of planetary level destruction and 1 being like flips over a car or something like that.
And 0 being none.
Yeah, 0 being none. 0 being a benevolent monster who causes no destruction whatsoever. I can't think of a single... Does
destruction count also as human life? So say if no building was destroyed, but someone died, that counts as destruction.
Oh yeah, that's destruction. That's like a solid 2 or 3, I would say.
Yeah.
If you go straight to killing someone, that's fairly high. And I'm also going to add a caveat / disclaimer at the beginning of this that this is mainly my fault. We're not going to talk about like the Universal monster movies from like the 20s through to the 40s here, purely because I haven't really seen that many of those, and I feel like they deserve their own podcast. That's not to say we'll never talk about them. Unless Anthony wants to talk about them here, I'm not going to mention them because I will make a fool of myself, or more of a fool than I normally do. But I say let's get started talking about some gosh darn monsters, and I'm sure you've got this one on your list.
Yep.
I'm sure you have. You simply must do.
Having said that, I will say Konrad has prepared a big long list of monster movies. I've already got a list of the ones I've actually watched this week. So Konrad didn't watch all of these this week, we'll just say.
Oh, no. No, a lot of these are movies that I haven't seen for a little while because I'm not insane. I'm not going to try and watch every single one of these. So you may find that my input on some of these movies is rather limited.
Yeah.
But
we'll talk about each one anyway, and I will let you know which ones I have actually watched recently.
Yeah. So this is one that I did watch this week, and it's the first time I've ever seen it. I've meant to watch it for years and years, never got round to it. And that is King Kong from 1933, which I believe you watched as well.
I did watch it, yes. I watched... Jeez, what do we have to say about King Kong? Like, I mean, I've got a lot to say,
monkey.
But I mean, I'm sure we don't have to tell people what it is. Is what I mean.
Do you know what surprised me the most about this movie is that I've seen the Peter Jackson one. I think I might have seen the one from the 70s as well when I was very young. But talking about the Peter Jackson one, I didn't realize that like the fight with the T-Rex and like kind of King Kong duking it out with other monsters on Skull Island was actually in the original.
Oh, didn't you?
So I was super impressed to see that stuff. Yeah, and like when I was young, I thought that this was Ray Harryhausen who did the animation for this. So
I thought that too. I thought that too.
So I was kind of. I found out after watching this that it's actually Willis H. O'Brien, who I think was Ray Harryhausen's mentor. But I was like super stoked to see that sort of stop motion animation really, really used a lot in this. You get like King Kong beating up or killing a T-Rex because it attacks Andaro's character.
Yeah.
I think there's a giant snake at some point. There might be some others as well, but yeah, there's some great stuff in it.
Giant snake. There's also like a Loch Ness monster type thing.
There is a Loch Ness monster
which eats a guy.
Yeah. Oh, and there's like a Stegosaurus as well that they just shoot straight away.
Yeah.
There's like no questions asked. Put her down. Yeah. And they like just start blasting it with rifles.
Yeah. So I think like I really enjoyed this film too. I watched it last night. You know, I don't know whether it's a monster movie podcast. I don't know whether we want to get into the obvious, issues with certain aspects of it.
I will. Yeah, there are some dated elements of this movie. I think it's fair to say, like the sort of inherent Orientalism is pretty on the nose, and it does have a line that is so outrageously outdated that it became probably my favorite line in the whole movie, and a line that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, which is that where Anne Darrow's character is talking to the handsome sea captain Jack before they arrive on Skull Island, and she says the line, "Why, Jack, you hate women," which is just great. That's just great stuff from the 30s there.
Yeah, but my favorite part, I thought you were going to say my favorite part was his response. He goes, "But Anne, you're not women."
Yeah. Thanks, Jack. That is good as well. But it's just that entire exchange is just could not do that. Even in like the 80s, I feel like you couldn't get away with that.
The film in general, like I think there's a lot of like I think even in Black Klansman they mention this randomly. The idea that the roles for black people were very much consigned to savages. Which obviously this is a very big thing. There's also the whole discussion of, which this is not just a King Kong analysis video, so maybe we'll go into the depths of this. There's a whole discussion of the way that they're taking this savage beast from its land where it was the king and taking it over to the civilized world. You might smell a metaphor in the plot. To be honest with you, it made me and my wife both be like, why did everyone want to remake this?
Because it's about a cool monkey that blows. No, it doesn't blow anything up. To be honest, returning to our arbitrary scaling.
Yeah,
I don't think King Kong actually rates that highly. He kills a T-Rex.
Yeah,
I'd say that gets him to that gets him up to 2. And he kills. I guess he kills a couple of guys. I don't really remember him killing that many. He grabs a plane.
He kills a few.
He doesn't. Yeah, As the benchmark for where we will progress on this rating, I would say he's maybe at a 5, because he really, once he gets to New York, he really doesn't do anything. He just kind of he stares in a little girl's window in a hilarious moment of comedy, and then climbs the Empire State Building and gets shot a bunch, which is
we did destroy one of the planes. I will say though, this version of King Kong, I was surprised. All of the tenderness and the empathy put into King Kong in Peter Jackson's 2005 version is not here at all. There's no bonding between Anne Darrow and the monkey.
There's a little. I think there's a little.
Not really compared to
as much.
Yeah, nowhere near as much. Nowhere near as much.
You can't.
I feel like I mean. I think it's in this one. It's very much one direction.
You think he's infatuated with her?
There's a tiny bit of that. I don't think there's anything in the. I didn't get anything in the other direction. And
I don't think she cares about him at all.
Whereas in the Peter Jackson one, you've literally got Ann Darrow screaming at the plane, "Stop shooting him! Stop!
Yeah.
Stop!" Like it's much more sympathetic character in the 2005 version, whereas this one, not at all.
Well, yeah, as the guy, I can't remember his character's name, but he's played by Jack Black in the Peter Jackson version. "'Twas beauty killed the beast."
Carl Denham.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I reckon about 5 for the old Kongster.
Yeah, I think I could agree with 5 for this version of Kong.
Okay, excellent. So have you got anything before the 50s now in your list?
No, well, actually, the only other 2 that I watched are both in the decade that's just passed.
Oh, okay, fine. That's cool. So I'm going to go through a couple. You've probably seen some of these, and if you haven't, it's fine. We'll go through them quickly. So the next one I watched, again, this is the first time that I'd ever seen this. It's been a massive glaring hole in my cinematic backlog, and that is 1954's Godzilla, which
originally, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen this one actually, but if I'm not mistaken, it is originally Japanese made.
Yes, yeah. So it's completely Japanese. It's basically. It couldn't really have been made anywhere other than Japan because it's about post atomic bomb droppings. Japan, it's like very like the whole idea is that we're testing these nuclear weapons and they are creating these monsters that we can't control and that will destroy the world. It's basically a very like anti-nuclear weapon movie, which is unsurprising given it was made in Japan in the 50s.
I'm just going to throw out a word here, Konrad, and you need to explain to me what the word means, right?
Go on.
And I'm going to show you ignorance if it's not even in the ballpark, but is it in the ballpark? Kaiju.
Oh yeah, kaiju is Japanese for big monster. Like kaiju originates in Godzilla.
Okay, gotcha.
So this it's funny actually. The animation in this has aged worse than in King Kong. I think like there are bits of this that are laugh out loud cheesy, and I really enjoyed it. It's a great movie, but you do have to watch it with kind of like a sense of like this is kind of dumb, but whatever. It's fine. Like when he's just like. He just fucks up like trains by like stamping on them, and then it cuts to like it's clearly a model train, and then it cuts to like the interior of the train, and all the people in it are just like whoa! It's like he just stepped on a train moving at like 90 miles an hour. Like you would all be dead. Like there's no way that would get. And he's also it has something that King Kong does have a bit, but it has like kind of interstitial spinning newspapers like and then headline. And Godzilla in one of those is described as the monster of the century, which to me implies there's going to be more than one, which I really like as a kind of a very pessimistic outlook for that news outlet. But Godzilla, he's way bigger than King Kong. He basically destroys the entirety of Tokyo in this movie, which I think in terms of monsters on this list and how much they destroy, I would argue that that Godzilla is probably at the top of the list because he literally takes out an entire city. There's a couple of others we're going to get to a bit later that might be higher. But also to kill him, spoilers for the end of Godzilla, they do kill him. They need to use the oxygen destroyer, which literally splits the oxygen atom and kills like everything in a 3-mile radius that has any oxygen in its body. So I think we can and they drop it in the ocean as well. So it's just like, well, I hope the fishing industry in Japan didn't need to exist for the next 100 years because you just decimated it.
Well, a lot of the population of Tokyo is gone now, so.
That's true. Yeah, that is true. They don't need to fish. They can't fish because they don't exist anymore.
So you're saying that he died at the end of this, but hang on, where does like King Kong versus Godzilla come into it?
Oh, this is a hole that I went down after this because at the end of the movie, like he gets they drop the oxygen destroyer, he turns into bones, and then the bones disappear as well. And I was like, well, how the fuck are there like a million sequels to these movies? And I think he just turns up again because basically at the end of this movie, the main scientist who is he's in a bunch of like Urzu and like other like samurai movies. Like he's a really big actor in Japan. I can't remember his name now. He's in Akiru. I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering it, but he's like the main scientist guy, and he basically says, "Oh, there'll be another Godzilla because if we keep testing nuclear weapons, they will, will irradiate some other member of this species, and they'll wake up."
Opening the door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I'm presuming in the sequels, it's not the Godzilla, it's another Godzilla, but they were just like, whatever, we're making a sequel.
Same thing. Like, and Godzilla is like, it's kind of a weird Komodo dragon bear type thing. Like it
Yeah.
looks kind of like a bear's proportions when it stands up with a tail.
Yeah, he's a chunky boy, and actually, I think he's the only one on this list that I've got that has powers. That's another thing,
like the
that
beams out of his mouth.
Yeah, like he can breathe like, I think. Well, in the original, it seems like he's breathing like steam out of his mouth, but it sets things on fire and makes them explode. So I don't know how that works. But yeah, he can charges his scales and then breathes fire.
Well, none of mine have powers either. Actually, that's a good point.
So there you go. I mean, he is literally the king of the monsters, so perhaps that's why. But my argument for Godzilla is going to be that he's probably an 8 on our planetary destruction scale, because I think there's a couple I've got that are higher.
I think the planet, like, to be a 10, the planet would literally have to blow up.
Yeah, you'd have to be like a Super Saiyan and like crack the planet in half to get a 10.
That's what I think. Godzilla's, definitely a big boy. It's apparently the original title here apparently is Gojira.
Yeah, Gojira. They mention it in the which we'll get to a bit later, in the 1998 what's it, Roland Emmerich one, where I can't remember his name now. The guy was in the they did one of the voices in The Simpsons, but he basically mispronounces it. No, it's not Hank Azaria, it's the other one. Harry Shearer.
Oh, okay.
Harry Shearer, yeah, he plays like a dickhead news reader in the 1998 one. He mispronounces Gojira as Godzilla, and that's how they end up at Godzilla, which is quite a funny way of of doing that. But yeah, so that's Godzilla. He's a biggie. He's a big one. I'm gonna take a brief detour now, and I don't know if you've seen these, but so I'll just go through. Go through all of these at once, because even though some of them are in the 70s, they kind of fit together. Did you ever, when you were a kid, did you watch any of like the Ray Harryhausen animation films?
No, not really. I may have accidentally seen one, and when you say it, I might be recognized, but not really.
So like these were basically like my bread and butter as a kid. So I absolutely love these movies. He made 3 Sinbad movies, so one in 58, one in 73, and one in 77. So he made the 7th Voyage of Sinbad. That was the first movie he made, which is an interesting title for like the first Sinbad movie that you're making. Then the Golden Voyage of Sinbad, and then Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. And I put these in here. They're technically multiple monsters, but the animation is so cool, and it's obviously so inspired by King Kong that I felt I had to mention them. So in the first one, he fights like a Cyclops, which is awesome. Then he fights some skeletons. He fights a rock, like a massive bird, and a dragon. In the second one, there's this like boat fight with this like the wooden figurehead comes to life and fights them with a harpoon. Then there's like, I can't remember what the Hindu many-armed god is, but there's essentially a statue that looks a bit like that, and it like gets a bunch of swords and fights like 8 guys at once. These movies rule so much. So I wanted to mention them in this, even though it's not technically big monsters. And then obviously you've got Jason and the Argonauts as well, which is Harryhausen did the animation for that, and you get the famous like skeletons and Hydra fight in that. I don't feel they necessarily fit in with the spirit of this, but I had to take my opportunity to mention them. So,
well, that is actually. But having said that, is like whenever we were watching it, Ema said to me, like, "Is that Ray Harryhausen? Is that the King Kong? Is that Ray Harryhausen?
King Kong, yeah.
So she knows him, and she mentioned Sinbad as well. So it's clear.
Okay, nice.
I'm just not very cultured. Like, let's be honest.
No, I mean, I feel like they were of a very specific time. I'm talking about problematic movies, those Sinbad movies. Holy smokes! Some of the Orientalism in those is a little rough today. Considering like 3 Sinbad movies, not once was it anything other than a white guy who played Sinbad, the Arabian pirate. Which
well, that's always the way. That's always. We talked last week about John Wayne playing Genghis Khan.
Yeah. Oh god. Yeah. If only we'll do a special episode on white guys playing people they really shouldn't have played in retrospect.
Yeah, we're gonna feed under the table first, then we'll pop into those sorts of topics.
Please don't unsubscribe. Okay, so moving on. I'm interested to hear what you think about this one, whether this counts as a monster movie.
Okay.
This is my only one from the 70s. I'm taking a bit of a jump
not mentioning
forward.
the King Kong remake.
No, I didn't bother mentioning the King Kong remake because A, I haven't seen it, and B, it's fucking, it's King Kong.
Yeah.
Same thing happens.
Yeah.
I put down 1975's Jaws. Do you think this qualifies as a monster movie?
It has to.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it has to. Because one of the films that I watched...
I know which one it is as well.
Yeah. It's basically... It's like... It's kind of like the sequel to Jaws. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I would call it a monster movie. Okay, he's not that big. And in our destruction scale... He's probably a 2 at best. He destroys like 2 boats in the whole movie, which on the Godzilla scale of things, Jaws does nothing. But in terms of iconic movie monsters, I think Jaws is up there, surely.
Well, Jaws actually brought a whole new dimension into the monster movie, and that was the tension building. I think they took that to another level with Jaws. There was a little bit of it in King Kong, 33 King Kong, that we noticed. Like they had like a child in the middle of the pathway as King Kong was running, and you had a bit of tension, like is it going to get the child? And eventually the mother swept through, or someone swept through and picked it up.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of it, but it was very rushed. Whereas Jaws took its time, really,
I feel like monster movies, again, I didn't see that many of the Universal ones. I've seen like Phantom of the Opera and Dracula, but most of them I've not seen. But I feel like maybe prior to Jaws, certainly in Western cinema, monster movies were very much kind of B movies. Like they weren't supposed to be good movies. The magic of them was in the monster itself, whether it be animation or costume, and being a bit creepy. Whereas Jaws is, for my money, certainly in terms of ones that I've seen, the first like movie where it's like, this is a monster movie, but this is also like legitimately one of the best films ever made. Like it's got great acting, great presentation, it's scary as hell, amazing score from John Williams. So I think Jaws has to be considered iconic. On this arbitrary scale, though, I'm going to say he can't get higher than a 2. He destroyed literally 2 boats in the whole movie. It's
true, but he did inspire a really funny, one of the funniest moments of the critically panned and financially unsuccessful Master of Disguise, starring Dana Carvey, where he dressed up as this man and he said, 15 kids go into the water. 9 kids come out of the water. The ice cream man, he takes the rest.
I have never seen that movie.
It's absolute trash, but it's trash that if you put yourself in the 12-year-old's mindset, it's the funniest thing of all time.
I want to see Dana Carvey doing a Quint impression. That sounds like...
If you want to see Dana Carvey, basically, you know how Dana Carvey is just like an impression every 10 seconds?
Yeah.
That's what that film is.
Right, okay, perfect. That sounds... to be honest, I'm going to retract that. That sounds like nothing I will ever watch, but I'm glad it exists in some...
I will say, though, there is a monster in it. Because he does dress up as... Now, this is a little bit of contention between me and my siblings, because I always argue with them. Because in the film, this is a mistake in that film, and we're taking a bit of a detour here, Konrad, but let me say this. He emerges... So the whole point of the film is that he's like... He can dress up as anything. He's a master of disguise. And he emerges from a cherry pie, right? And he's covered in cherries and like cherry juice. And he's just covered in cherries. He leaves the crust behind. He doesn't take any of that with him. Now, this is the interesting part. He's running through this mansion, and some guy goes, "It's a cherry pie man! Get him!" Right? But how does he know he's a cherry pie man and not just a cherry man? That's what I want to know.
That's a fair point.
He didn't see him emerge.
Yeah, that's a clear logic in the visual consistency of that movie. You should write to Dana Carvey and be like...
It doesn't count as a monster movie, though. Cherry Pie Man.
I mean, if the Wolfman does, then technically anything with a man at the end of it counts. Spider-Man is a monster movie, I think, as
Honey Boy? No, Honey Boy doesn't count.
It's a different kind of monster movie. That's about an abusive father. Okay, we're moving on.
All right.
We're moving on because I've got a lot to get through and like no time whatsoever to do it. So this is a movie that's very near and dear to my heart. I'd be surprised if you've seen this actually, so I don't know if it's necessarily your cup of tea. This is 1990s Tremors. Have you watched this movie?
No.
So this is like, to me, this is one of the best proper B movies. Or I guess like kind of the last hurrah for B movies, because they really didn't make them after a little while. And I feel like by the end of the 90s, we were already getting into the kind of garbage B movie territory of like Sharknado and Piranha and stuff like that, where they were just movies that literally had like no one cared about. Basically, no one cared in the process of making them. Tremors is amazing. Like Kevin Bacon and oh god, I should have brought all this up. I haven't pulled it up in front of me. But the other lead played like these two brothers who basically are like everymen who go around this like desert town. I think it's in that like set in Arizona or something, doing odd jobs. And then these fucking worms under the ground that like hunt them by hearing them start killing people. And the creature effects are so good in it. It uses there is one part that uses like stop motion animation, but the rest of it is kind of like in picture practical effects, and they are so good. And they bleed this like horrible orange stuff. And there's a great scare at the beginning where they're like looking for this guy who runs this goat farm, and they see like just a hat on the ground, and they pick up the hat, and his head is there like. And like he's been sucked into the ground. It doesn't make any sense in the context of what these things like. They hunt you. These things hunt you. Why would they leave just a head facing up out of the ground? It doesn't matter. It's a great scare. But yeah, Tremors is really good fun and one of my favorite monster movies.
What year did that come out?
1990, I think Tremors came out. They made a bunch of sequels to it. I don't know if I haven't actually seen them, so I'm not sure how many Kevin Bacon was in. I feel like he probably needed the money at that point because Kevin Bacon's career was on a downward slide.
What makes me want to watch it is just that Kevin Bacon's character's name is Valentine McKee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Fred Ward, that's it. Valentine McKee and Earl Bass, played by Fred Ward. Fred Ward is so good. Like it's one of the only times actually as well that I've seen Fred Ward play a hero. Like normally he plays a villain, like in the third Naked Gun film. He always plays like a kind of mafia heavy. But
he was like his generation's what do you call it, Julia Roberts' brother? Him.
Oh, Eric Roberts.
Yeah, it's like his generation's Eric Roberts.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, like you need a bad guy, Fred Ward's your man.
Yeah.
We should still be casting him in things. He's quite old now, actually, but he's a bit of like he always struck me as like a poor man's Robert De Niro, but which I don't mean as disrespect to him because it's a pretty high bar.
You just reminded me. There's a frame. There's a part of King Kong 1933 where there's a character. You know. Now, it's literally nearly 100 years old. Whenever they bring King Kong back to New York, and there's like a lot of photographers, right?
Yeah. There's
one of them that gets a line. He's from the back of the pack, like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" Right? That guy looks exactly like Robert De Niro. Like, I literally rewinded it and said to Emma, "Look, there's Robert De Niro," and she's laughing, like, "What are you talking about?" Is that Robert De Niro?
I don't know whether. I feel like one of Robert De Niro's parents might have been an actor. I doubt it was them, but we'll have to find out. We'll do some research off screen and report back with our findings, listeners.
We will.
So yeah, I like Tremors. I mean, they just kind of fuck up like a desert town in Arizona. So I'm gonna say maybe a 4
for these worms
4
with teeth.
Or a 3. Something like that.
I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen it, but they don't look like things that could bring down a skyscraper. That's for sure.
No. Again, like I mean, we're talking about the sort of granular low level damage here when you compare it to someone literally destroying an entire city. Mm-hmm. And likewise, so this is another one actually. The second mention of Steven Spielberg on this list. This next one. Well, I wasn't sure if you want to consider this a monster movie. It comes under the multiple monster category, although there's really 1 or 2 that were the stars of the show.
E.T.
And that's not... Yeah, that motherfucker. No, it's 1993's Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
I don't know if you call this a monster movie, but I've included it.
In my opinion, it does hit all the hallmarks of a monster movie.
Yeah,
like the way it's introduced, the sciencey talk about it, like how they created these monsters.
Dino DNA.
Yeah, yeah, Dino DNA. Yeah,
that entire bit, I'm just like my eyes glaze over. It's like, why are you even explaining this to me?
It was in the nectar, right?
Yeah,
but I was actually thinking that like when I was trying to think of monster movies you wouldn't necessarily think of as a monster movie, I was like, yeah, it probably is. It probably is.
The T-Rex definitely goes down as like one of the more iconic movie monsters, I think, and the Velociraptor for that matter as well. Like that sort of I think this one is probably up there with like Godzilla's roar is super iconic. Like a lot of people when they hear Godzilla's roar, like you immediately know that it's Godzilla. And I feel like the T-Rex roar and the Velociraptor like thing they do is like that's like those have been kind of ingrained into the cultural lexicon now. So anytime you see a T-Rex in anything that isn't Jurassic Park, this is like the reference point for it. It's like, how are you ripping off Steven Spielberg's dinosaurs? Because that's what everyone assumes these things sound like now, even though it's probably wrong.
Yeah, and it's also like a subgenre of monster films, which I really like. It's quite a big subgenre, I will say, but it's where like the first third of the film they're in awe of the monster.
Yeah.
And they have no part of their brain thinking that this is going to go wrong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a majesty to them where they're just like, this is great, and then suddenly it's like, oh no, there are T-Rexes.
Yeah. No, but I think that counts. It's also the second Spielberg one, which is sort of a monster movie, but also a real movie. You know what I mean? You know what I mean by real movie? Yeah.
It's like it's an Oscar contender. I'm assuming Jurassic Park was nominated for Oscars. I don't actually.
It won three. Yeah,
it must have been nominated for something.
Yeah, best sound, best effects, sound effects, editing, and best effects, visual effects. So all about the effects, really.
Not
all
best
about
picture.
the effects. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So there you go, Jurassic Park. I think in the arbitrary scale of judging the level of destruction, if we take, I'm going to break from tradition and take the. I guess it's not even a trilogy now. It's a quintilogy. Is that what you call it? If you take Jurassic World as well.
Yeah, because it wasn't a reboot, was it? It was actually.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, they say it's not a reboot. It's one of those like cheeky remakes where they're just like, it's not a remake. It's like it is a remake though, isn't it, guys? Like, come on.
I think they bring some characters back, but yeah, I know what you mean.
They do, like Jeff Goldblum or Ian. Oh my God, Ian Malcolm. That's it. My brain isn't working for character names today.
It's Ian like Malcolm, what they're doing with the new Suicide Squad film. Did you hear about that?
No. What's happening with that?
So the director of Guardians of the Galaxy is creating the new Suicide. Yeah, gone yet. But what they're doing is they're keeping Harley Quinn because she's a real asset to the franchise, obviously. Yeah. They're keeping like your fella who's like the army guy who's from The Killing. I can't remember his name. Joel somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keeping him, and they're also keeping Viola Davis's character, right?
Yeah.
And then they're just been like, right, let's get a whole different set of criminals and have them be. So the Suicide Squad is basically just continuing in the same universe, but all the other ones except for Harley Quinn aren't being included in the squad anymore.
Yeah, Jared Leto's Joker is just shuffled off into a corner somewhere to be like, we're not that interested in you anymore. I wonder if they'll recast the Joker actually for that.
For that little segment of the DC universe, yeah. They should, is what I'll say.
Yeah. No, I never know how I feel about that. Like they did it in The Thing as well, which is a movie I haven't included on here, and I probably should have because it's kind of a monster movie. But they made The Thing. They made a prequel to The Thing in. It was like 2010 or something, but it was clearly just a remake because it's literally the same story, but just done again, which kind of made me question why it even needed to be remade.
Well, it's kind of like the like Jurassic Park is kind of like the first half of King Kong, and then Jurassic Park: The Lost World is like the second half of King Kong.
Yeah, that is true. Well, I mean, Jurassic Park, The Lost World has them like hunting the dinosaurs as well. Like, I have a lot of time for The Lost World. Like Pete Postlethwaite as like this like Australian big game hunter. Really, that ticks a lot of boxes for me. That character. So, and like the velociraptors in the long grass. Oh, it's a great scene. Lost World is an underappreciated gem.
It is, but I will say I saw it on video when it came out. But if any people who are picking up on the trivia here. I said I saw Jungle to Jungle as my first film last week. Well, the same day when we all went to the cinema, my mom took me and my younger brother to Jungle. And my older brother, who was old enough, and my dad went to see The Lost World on the same day.
I mean, I think we know who made the right choice there, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, Tim Allen.
Speaking of movies that completely rip off other movies, the end of Lost World, which is coincidentally the weakest part of that movie, is literally just Godzilla. They were like, we need a T-Rex to run riot in San Francisco, and God bless them, they did it. It wasn't a good idea, but they did it. Right, moving on. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about this next one quite quickly because it's been a little while since I've seen this. But I wanted to mention it. This is 2006's The Host by Bong Joon-ho, like most recently of Parasite fame. This is a really cool monster movie. It's more about, as a lot of monster movies are, particularly non-Western ones. It's more about this kind of family of failures and oddities, and their kind of way of bonding together to figure out a way to rescue their daughter who's abducted by the monster than about the monster itself, which is cool. It really focuses on the human drama, and then when you do get the moments with the monster, the design is really cool. It's kind of like an ambient eel, which is with like 4 legs, but it's I mean it's not one of it's kind of one of Bong Joon-ho's like middle films. I think he was making stuff in the 90s, I believe, as well. But it's well worth checking out, particularly if you're in the mood for a kind of easy introduction to Korean cinema, or South Korean cinema, I should say.
Out of curiosity, it's called The Host. Does that mean that the monster sort of takes over someone's brain? Is that?
I actually can't remember why it's like called The Host. I don't believe like basically it starts with, as many of these films do, some bastard rich white guy deciding to dump a bunch of chemicals into a river because it's cheaper than disposing of them safely, and that creates this monster. I don't recall whether it implants anything into you. I don't think it does. I may be mistaken about that, but I've never actually...
I wonder if it's a direct translation, because I think the Korean name is Gwomul. I don't know if that's the direct translation as The Host. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, I've never really interrogated what the meaning of that title is, actually, and perhaps I should have. But yeah, it's a good movie. In terms of destruction, this guy's pretty small, so I'm going to say like a 3, maybe. He doesn't... like that. The monster in The Host really doesn't do that much damage. He kidnaps like 2 people.
Now, hang on, just for consistency, Jaws was 2.
Yeah.
More or less.
I think he does more than Jaws, because Jaws destroys like 2 boats.
Okay.
Jaws does literally nothing. He kills a couple of kids. I guess Jaws does do more murdering than the monster and the host. The host does a bit more. All right, I'll say it's 2 as well, in the interest of keeping our scale balanced.
Yeah, we've got to be serious about this, Konrad. We've got to be 100% serious.
If we don't take this seriously, no one will. So yeah, we've got to do it. Okay, fine.
Well, if we've gone to 2006, I will say we've jumped over a film that I wanted to question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go on.
Now, I didn't watch this week, but it's a film that for better or worse, and you will laugh at me for saying this, I do love this film.
Okay.
I probably shouldn't, but I do. I'm afraid to say it now because you are going to laugh.
Go on.
I do really love the film. It's The Village.
Oh, The Village is okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure I would love to do a M. Night Shyamalan podcast one day, but I mean, needless to say with The Village. Okay. We'll not get into everything about The Village, but I do love The Village. I love it. I love Joaquin Phoenix in it. I love Bryce Dallas Howard. I think it's just a really, really good film. Where I question it is, I don't really think they had to show the particular place at the end. They could have just alluded to that. Anyway, yeah. Okay. But we all know Shyamalan, and we always know he likes
he loves a twist.
Loves a twist. So this is my point. I wanted to ask: is this a monster movie? Because there are monsters in it. But they're not necessarily, now, spoilers, they're not necessarily real.
I don't think I'd call it a monster movie because we don't see enough of them. I think, to me, the definition of a monster movie
more of a pseudo-horror then.
Yeah, I would call it like a horror/thriller, purely because I think to be a monster movie, the monster needs to be the main event. Like the bits where you see the monster are like the sort of central bits of the movie. Whereas I think with the Village, it's more just that kind of sense of tension and the human drama in the Village.
Definitely, yeah.
That drives it. But I mean, the monster design actually in the Village is cool. I remember really liking them, and it is definitely a creepy film. It is, yeah. It's one of those movies that I feel like has kind of in the sort of rush to dismiss M. Night Shyamalan as a bad director who made a couple of good films early in his career. I feel like The Village is kind of lost as one that's actually pretty good. And
well, come on, he literally had what was it? Unbreakable, Signs, Sixth Sense, The Village. I think there is 4 good ones to me. There might even be one more, but I can't remember which other one. But
yeah, well, and he punched up the script for She's All That, I believe, the romantic comedy, which is how
that's
how
actually not a bad film.
No, it's not, and it's not badly written either. So there you go. Shyamalan did some good work on rom-coms as well.
She's All That actually was the basis of the film Not Another Teen Movie. So we have that to thank for too, because Not Another Teen Movie is the only good one of those Not Another films. I will say that.
Yeah. They dropped off a cliff in quite. It wasn't a high cliff to begin with, to be honest.
A 35-year-old Jamie Presley playing a 18-year-old cheerleader. Chris Evans playing the jock.
It was great seeing Chris Evans before he settled into his sort of Hollywood superhero leading man persona. He was making stuff like that, and God bless him for it. I loved him.
I will say before we leave the village, one thing, and this is maybe some people didn't realize this, but what I love about the decision in the village is the violin the whole time is really like the star of the film, right? The violin score. The violin player is the first credit in the credits.
Oh, that's cool,
isn't it?
I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's nice that they're just like, yeah, you did a lot on this, so front and center.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I can't say for certain that there was a violin player in this movie that's coming up next, but I'm going to mention it anyway, regardless. And that is 2008's Cloverfield, which featured a big fucking probably the only monster on this list to rival Godzilla in size. Have you ever seen Cloverfield?
I saw it when it first came out. It's like it's like a found footage sort of deal, isn't it? Like,
yeah, so everything's filmed from handheld cameras, and it's
J.J. Abrams, isn't it?
It is J.J. Abrams, I believe. Yes, it's okay, qualitatively speaking. I didn't love it. I think there's a great bit at the beginning where the cast of characters are leaving a party because something has happened, and they're running down a main thoroughfare in New York, where the city, where the majority of the movie takes place, and suddenly the head of the Statue of Liberty just lands in the middle of the road, and it's like,
of course it does.
And I really appreciate a monster that can understand the value of a visual metaphor by being like, this statue looks important to these people, so I'm going to knock it down because we all know the symbolism of this. It doesn't make any sense, and I don't care. That's probably one of the better bits of the movie, but it suffers from a problem that a movie which I didn't put on this list, in fact, actually, no, I did, and I skipped over it. So I'll go back to that in a second. It suffers from a problem that another movie on this list also suffers from, which is that the Cloverfield monster is big and imposing and terrifying, and the shots of it in like kind of news footage or when they see glimpses of it are really genuinely unsettling because it's enormous, and it's just like, stepping on buildings. It really gives this sense of kind of existential, otherworldly dread. But it has like little kid monsters that end up running around the like the underground tunnels, the subway system in New York, and they are the first time you ever meet. We're both fans of wrestling here, right?
Yeah.
When you're introducing a bad guy, you need to feed it a few jobbers to get it over. Like, you need to establish it as a threat. If the first thing you do with a bad guy is have it just get punked out by a bunch of unarmed humans in the subway tunnel, no, it's not a threat. No one cares. Like, and that's unfortunately what happens here. Like, there's people running through these subway tunnels, like, oh my god, and then suddenly these like things start coming at them. They're like little xenomorphs out of Aliens, and I don't think they kill any of them. It's like, well, these things are useless. Like, what is the threat here? There's no threat whatsoever. So that was a mark.
Strange. Is there a certain amount of people that, like, it's a 15s at that time? Yeah. Could they not kill a certain amount of people?
I think it's just they'd already killed most of the people they were going to kill at that point. A bit with the big monster like stepping on people while they're on bridges and stuff. So I remember that bit being super disappointing. But I will also say that in terms of destruction level, I think the Cloverfield monster is as high on this list as anything. I would say it's probably at like a 9, because I'm pretty sure it destroys like the entire east coast of America before it stopped. Like, it just kind of wanders around.
Why do monsters love destroying buildings? Like,
I mean, it's like when you're on the beach and you just walk through sandcastles, isn't it? It's just really satisfying. Just break some shit, and if you're a monster that size, you don't care about human costs.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm going to go back and mention one quickly, just because I skipped over it, and I couldn't live with myself if I skipped over this.
Before you do, I need to correct and say that J.J. Abrams was the producer of Cloverfield. Matt Reeves was the director.
Oh, that's right. It was Matt Reeves, yeah. I'm glad you got... Yeah, we don't want those Cloverfield heads coming after us.
Yeah, well, the Cloverfield fans are going to come out the woodwork.
I will say, actually, Like 33 Cloverfield. I haven't seen Cloverfield Paradox. 33 Cloverfield Lane is ostensibly a sequel to Cloverfield, and it is a far better monster movie than the original Cloverfield. It's not about a big monster, but yeah, it's a way better movie, and it has John Goodman in it. Which
I haven't actually seen that one, so maybe I should.
Oh, okay, that's worth. It's more about a thriller. It's basically Mary Elizabeth Winstead and John Goodman, and I can't remember the name of the other actor, but they're trapped in a bunker because the shit is going on outside. But it's all about, is something actually going on, or is this guy just insane? And it's it's much more tense because it's a much more focused story. Whereas Cloverfield, I think, suffers from the fact that because it's all shot in handheld and they get right into the monster stuff straight away, you don't really know any of these characters, so it's a bit like, I don't really care when you die. Now, I mentioned this in your introduction and I almost skipped over it, and I could not have slept at night if I'd done this, and that is, of course, Roland Emmerich's 1998 Godzilla, Matthew Broderick, Jamiroquai on the soundtrack, Jean Reno being a French hunter. It's a terrible movie.
I remember it being terrible.
It is terrible, but it's got Hank Azaria and Harry Shearer, as we've discussed in it. So it's got like 33% of the voice cast of The Simpsons in this movie.
Jean Reno.
Jean Reno's great in it. Like, this is Jean Reno. So it's 98. It's a couple of years after Leon the Professional. Yeah. So like Jean Reno was coming in hot on this one, and he plays like this kind of French hunter who goes into the talking about, big monsters having babies. Godzilla somehow lays eggs in the New York subway system in this one as well, and they turn into like little baby velociraptors, which Jean Reno goes and deals with. So it's a well-worn trope, but this movie, the kindest thing I can say about 1998's Godzilla is that the Jamiroquai song on the soundtrack is amazing. It's a legitimate banger.
Yeah, that was in the charts for a long time. Yeah. I will say as well, Kevin Dunn's in it. Not that one, but Kevin Dunn is in it. Not that one to wrestling fans, But Kevin Dunn is an image of my childhood. Whenever I see his face, all I think, and maybe this is a monster movie. It's not. I'm just kidding. But Small Soldiers. He's from Small Soldiers.
And anytime you need someone to play a dad in a mid '90s kind of, maybe a little bit actiony, but needs a bit of comedy in the performance kind of role, Kevin Dunn's your man.
In fact, actually, I only watched it a few weeks ago, but I can't even remember, but maybe he was in Deep Impact. I can't remember, but that's the sort of thing we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, he has definitely played. No, I think he was Shia LaBeouf's dad in Transformers, and I'm pretty sure he was. He plays a dad in. I've never seen him play anything other than a dad. Kevin Dunn, like he is.
Well, he was a principal in Warrior.
Oh, he was the principal.
I'm sure he had kids in that as well, though.
He's a father figure. He's a father figure in that. Yeah, Kevin Dunn is a great shout. That's like one of the like kind of last bastions of like great character actors from that 90s period where it's just like it's always the same character. Talk about Fred Ward. Like Kevin Dunn's another one of those characters, just like he's your man. He's like every agent in Hollywood's Rolodex. It's like we need a kind of like comedy father figure. It's just got Kevin Dunn in it.
Yeah, he's always got work. He's always got work. Yeah, he keeps the price. He keeps his price low so that he's always in work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great shout.
Where is he these days? The thing is, he's still alive. He's still kicking. Like he's still going.
What's the last thing he made? He made he's just been doing TV. To be honest, looking at this, doesn't look great.
Yeah, it's not looking great for Kevin Dunn. No, we'll focus on his good times. Small Soldiers, that's where it was.
Small Soldiers. That is the movie I have seen the most in the cinema of any movie I've ever seen. I saw that 4 times in the cinema. Whoa. I loved it so much. I've got
you. I think I saw Man of Steel 5.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's maybe worse. I don't know. Like, I don't hate Man of Steel as much as everyone else does, but I probably wouldn't see that more than once.
I was like a 12 or 13-year-old. It was my first Superman film to watch in the cinema. Like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I think that was the bit in Small. I was probably about 12 or 11 when Small Soldiers came out, and the bit where they roll out on the like RC cars while War is playing in the background. I was like, that's so badass. Yes. I completely misunderstood like the morality of the central conflict. I was like, the Gorgons suck. I want these soldiers to win. Like, I want Tommy Lee Jones' side. Gorgonites, rather, not Gorgons. Yeah, I wanted Tommy Lee Jones to win. Still bitter about that.
No, I was on the Gorgonite side, 100%.
Oh, no, Gorgonites were a bunch of hippies. They suck. No, they were all right.
Look at me. I'm a Gorgonite through and through.
No, I mean the Gorgonites are clearly the good guys in that situation. I was just an idiot child who was like, "Yeah, the soldiers, man." I like this guy who's like got a massive rocket launcher. That was stupid. It's amazing that I ended up even slightly well-adjusted as a human being. Anyway, we're gonna say we got a couple more monster movies to go through here. 2013 was it was a good year for monster movies in the sense that we don't actually get that many of them these days. 2 came out in 2013. So one of these I think you've probably seen, the other one you haven't. So I'll start with the one you haven't. And that was Shin Godzilla, which is a Japanese movie. This was kind of like a soft reboot, I believe, of the Godzilla franchise. It's basically a remake of the original. And it's really good fun. It's really cheesy. It has the same thing that Godzilla has, which is basically Godzilla turns up, fucks up a bunch of stuff, and then we cut to a bunch of people, like politicians and scientists in a room being like, how do we deal with this? And then it goes back to Godzilla fucking stuff up, and they're like, this still isn't working. And it is literally just those 2 things interspersed for the entire movie, which... that might not sound appealing to you, and it's totally understandable if it doesn't. If that doesn't appeal to you, you probably won't like Godzilla movies because that's all that it is. But Shin Godzilla has one of my favorite character presentations in any monster movie ever, which is, I think it's something that's relatively common, particularly in Japanese films, when they need to get a character played by a Japanese person who is like the English expert. So in this particular movie, there's a Japanese woman who has been apparently living in America for like 20 years. She's like a naturalized American, and she's like representing foreign interests. She like comes back into the movie and she's like, I'm representing the USA, but she's played by a Japanese woman who clearly doesn't actually speak very good English, and obviously written by someone who doesn't really understand American culture very much, and it ends up with one of my favorite characters ever, because the stuff, if you imagine someone who's never been to America but has learned everything they know about America through movies and like music, and them trying to sort of portray a character as American, that's what you get here. So it's just like, I'm going to talk about hamburgers, and it's just like, okay, great.
It's like asking a weeaboo to be Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. You'll just get the most surface level presentation of what the rest of the world thinks that country's about, and it is very, very funny. So this no, I can't remember if I mentioned for Godzilla 98 the rating, and we have to maintain this. I'm gonna say 7 for that one, because it doesn't destroy the whole city.
I'm interested. I'm really interested. Sorry, before you, that they made Shin Godzilla literally like around the same time, a couple of years before maybe, as the Godzilla reboot in America.
Yeah, I don't know how the licensing worked for that, to be honest, because I assume that I can't remember who it was. Might have been Paramount. I can't remember who put out Godzilla 2014, but they must have just bought the Western distribution rights for it, or the company who like traditionally made, I think it might be Toho, who made the original Godzilla movies. Maybe they maintain the rights to make their own ones as well. Yeah. But yeah, as you say, it came out like a year before the 2014 Bryan Cranston Godzilla. So
it's making me think that possibly like part of the deal was, yeah, you can make one, but you have to give us 50 million towards ours. You know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah, maybe that one funded the good one.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But yeah, so in that one, I mean, it's the same level of destruction, basically. He really wrecks Tokyo, so I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 for Shin Godzilla, or just Godzilla in that. In 2013 as well, I'm not sure if you've seen this. I imagine it's more likely. Did you ever watch Pacific Rim?
I didn't. You recommended this highly to me, and no, I didn't watch it.
So I actually this is one of the ones I rewatched recently, and this movie I have gone off massively.
Oh, really? You were really high on this?
Yeah, I think when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's big robots fighting big monsters. It's super cool. It's so badly written and so badly paced, and there are so many characters in it doing accents that they don't need to be, or so many actors in it doing accents that they don't need to do, and they're so bad at it. Like Charlie Hunnam should never be allowed to do an American accent again. He's so bad at it. And Idris Elba just abandons trying to do an American accent about halfway through this movie. It's like, no, I'm just going to be American. But the kaiju in this are pretty cool, and I'm going to give a shout out for the Jaegers as well. Big robots are very much in my wheelhouse as a fan of like Gundam anime, and I think I'm going to say the kaiju in this, I think they say in one kaiju attack they destroy I think it's like 5 American cities. So I think these guys deserve a 9 on the rating scale as well.
That's big.
Yeah.
And
there are loads of them. They're like, and those are like category 3s or 2s or whatever. By the end of it, we're on category 5s, which are the big guys.
And this, like, to be honest with you, I'm quite ignorant in terms of like Japanese cinema. But is it the fact that these like kaiju, is there a lot of anime film, or that basically what I mean is like the fact that they're getting into these big robots and going to fight the monsters? It's basically the part of the plot of the Overwatch lore,
Oh yeah,
but that's drawn from Japanese cinema, or like in what aspect is that? Is that in anime? Is that in manga? Like where does it stem
the
from?
kaiju?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's why Godzilla
not just kaiju, like actually like getting into these mechs and going to fight.
Well, I think that would have like mechs fighting giant monsters. I don't know where that started, but I mean, mecha anime started in like the late 70s with with Gundam 79, I think it was. But most of that was fighting other robots, and it's very like kind of mechanical war. I suppose you've got stuff like Neon Genesis Evangelion in the 90s, which is about monsters coming from outer space to attack Earth, and you have these angels which are mecha designed for fighting them. I think Pacific Rim is basically an amalgamation of the director Guillermo del Toro's interests, which is stuff like Evangelion and mecha anime and Godzilla. So it's kind of meshing them together. But certainly, I don't think it was a movie in Japan that first did the giant robot fighting giant monster thing. I think it probably was anime in maybe the 80s or the 90s that combined them for the first time. But I mean, yeah, I'm grateful to whoever did it, because big monsters punching big robots in the face is a never-ending source of joy for me, even in a movie like this, which I think is I've soured on quite a lot.
I know that Guillermo del Toro said about this film, I made one for you, now I get to make one for me, and he went and made The Shape of Water.
Yeah, I mean, The Shape of Water is a lovely film, so I think I'll give him Pacific Rim. And I think the big problem with Pacific Rim actually as well is that it was like this attempt at bringing like a kind of auteur director in to make what is essentially a Hollywood blockbuster. And I don't think it did very well, either critically or financially. And unfortunately,
got a sequel.
It did get the sequel is even worse than this. But yeah, it doesn't deliver on a lot of its promise, which is a shame, because it has a lot of cool. Well, I mean, the fights in it are still really awesome, I will say, but it's I don't think the monster designs are that strong. When you look at some of the monsters on this list, particularly the classic ones like Godzilla and King Kong, I think they have much better designs than the kaiju, which are just kind of like amorphous, spiky monsters that have blue eyes.
They were sort of an afterthought.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're into 20. We're done with 2013. Where are the ones that you've seen?
Both 2018.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll rush through a couple, and then we'll get to your ones, because I definitely haven't seen one of those. So 2014. Don't call it a comeback, but it's the 4th time it's on this list. 4th time? Yeah, 4th time it's on this list, and that's the Bryan Cranston Godzilla. Excuse me. From what I recall, this is mainly a movie about army guys. Godzilla doesn't show up until the last half hour, and then he fights a bunch of flying monsters. He does he does significantly less destruction, I think, than in the other movies. So maybe he gets like a 8 or a 7. But I don't have that much to say about this because it's not that good a movie. And then the next one, the one I actually did want to mention, I'm just gonna take a drink quickly. Excuse me. The one that I did want to mention was a movie which wasn't very well received, but which I have a really big soft spot for, and that's Kong Skull Island from 2017. Did you see this movie?
No, I didn't. I've seen the trailer, and the trailer looks really good.
Yeah, I think the trailer really captures the kind of Vietnam movie trappings that they're going for with this. It's essentially someone takes a Vietnam movie and puts it on Skull Island, where the Viet Cong are replaced by crazy skull-faced lizard monsters that are hunting a bunch of United States airborne troops as they go looking for Kong. I can't actually remember now. It's been a while since I've seen this. The central premise, I can't remember why they're looking for Kong, but there's probably a reason for it. Kong is great in this. I think it's the best he's ever been. Like, it's a really good presentation of him. It's kind of one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to Kong versus Godzilla, because I think
he does look good. Their version of Kong.
Yeah, and they do capture. There's less of the. It's less of like the schmaltziness of the Peter Jackson King Kong, where it's like, oh, he's in love with Naomi Watts. Like, it's a little bit more down. Not that that's bad, but it's more downplayed than that. It's just, he has some emotions and behaviors to him that are reminiscent of a human, and certainly when he's played in contrast to these kind of monstrous skull-faced lizards that are just killing indiscriminately, it's like, oh yeah, he's a good guy. Which I feel like Kong is like an anti-hero. He's not the good guy, but sometimes you need someone who's a bit of a bastard to fuck up the thing that's worse, and that's where Kong sits. But I really liked this movie, and I thought Kong was great in it. In terms of destruction, it's all on his island, so he doesn't really get to destroy anything. But he kills a bunch of lizards and some dinosaurs, I think. So I'm gonna say maybe a 5 he gets.
Does he take down any of the helicopters?
I think he does, yeah. I think he kills a bunch of army guys. That gets him up
the list a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. He kills a bunch of army guys, but ultimately there aren't that many people to kill in the grand scheme of things. So he's limited in his opportunities. But still, like Kong Skull Island, I think one of the better representations of King Kong. Now, awesome. We're into 2018. I'm going to let you go because I've just run through all of mine.
Okay. So I've got 2 in 2018. One I believe you have seen, or at least you know a fair bit about. So I'll start with the other one. Interestingly, we've talked a lot about King Kong on this, and the one that I watched, one of the ones I watched this week, is very obviously heavily inspired by King Kong. It's Rampage by with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, directed by Brad Payton, who I'm not familiar with any other work from Brad Payton. Now, the idea of Rampage is very interesting. I vaguely remember, as if it's like some part of a fever dream, playing the video game in the 90s.
You literally... Rampage World Tour and Rampage Universal Tour.
Yeah, you play the monster and you just destroy things, right?
Yeah, you play... hold on now, I'll remember it. It's Ralph the Werewolf, George the Monkey, and Lizzie the Lizard. And you basically get put on a stage and you have to destroy the entire city before you leave. And the only thing I remember about it is tanks are a real pain in the ass. Yeah,
so I remember that, and I knew when I saw the trailer that that's what this was, right? So basically, what it is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is probably the most muscular, I don't know, is he a vet? He's not even a vet.
Yeah, he's like an animal handler.
He's an animal handler. He's basically like Chris Pratt in the new Jurassic Park, right? But in Jurassic World, but. So he has this relationship with a gorilla called George, who's an albino gorilla. So it was very important that he save him from the poachers, who we later find out in the film when he's trying to impress Naomi Harris. He's trying to impress her. He says that none of those poachers left alive. That's how he put it. So
it's an interesting chat up line from The Rock there. Like, I've killed several men.
Yeah, and it's an interesting take as well, because the way that they've done this is. The gorilla. Okay. So it started like any great monster movie should, in space, in the International Space Station. Yep. They were experimenting on rats, right? Then this woman who got like basically the rat got out of the cage. It started growing. It went mad, and then they were like, right, okay, we need to get off this space station. So then she went and get in the escape pod. And then these 2 rich, stuck-up owners of the company she was working for were like, no. Go back in and get the pathogen, basically. Get our research, because otherwise it's all been for nothing. So they made her go back into the space station with this rat in zero gravity trying to grab her, right? She manages to get the thing, go down to Earth. Okay, it's released. 3 animals get infected by this pathogen. As you say, a gorilla called George, and then a wolf and a crocodile or an alligator.
Yeah.
But they don't actually name the other 2. George has a name because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson works with George. And George is actually fluent in sign language, would you believe?
Yeah, a classic. One of my favourite tropes of these kind of movies, I believe I first saw it in the movie Congo, is gorillas that can speak sign language.
Yeah, and one thing that's really hilarious is at the start, you think, obviously, they do the funny thing of, you think George is against him, is going to attack him, and then all of a sudden it's like George is laughing with him, But there's a moment, and we've mentioned we're wrestling fans already, but there's a moment where George does his best Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Attitude Era impression to Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Does he flip him off? I don't remember that bit.
He flips him off. So he flips him off, big time.
And gives him a stunner and swigs some beer.
It's a little moment like, he's literally flipping him off. The gorilla's flipping off and it's like, hey audience, remember that he can do this for later. Okay.
Yeah. This is an important development for George's character.
Yeah. So basically, a monster movie happens, and there's a few things I wanted to talk about. So first of all, the reason why these animals are able to be genetically modified and grow huge and start destroying things is through CRISPR. Now, I've talked about before on this podcast, Lucy, made by Luc Besson, and the idea of we only use 10% of our brains, right? Yeah. And filmmakers are like, that's gold, and like writing scripts based on that alone, right, for decades. Yeah. Well, we found our new one. I've watched 2 or 3 things in the last month where they mention CRISPR.
I don't even know what that is. When you said it, I was like, do you mean Crispin Glover?
No, CRISPR. So CRISPR, CRISPR, I think it is. And it's basically like a new thing that's been discovered in the last decade where you can actually modify the genes of things.
Oh, okay. Fine. That's my uneducated non-science brain being exposed there.
So as soon as go and watch some YouTube videos on it. It's really cool what they can actually do. But basically, like they might be able to in the future. Now, this is not an ethics podcast, but they might be able to, like, if there's a baby in a womb, they growing in the very early stages, and they see that it's going to have some, like, it won't survive because of whatever reason, they could go in and alter the genes of it. You can also like alter plants to have a certain feature and stuff. But basically, filmmakers and writers have heard this CRISPR thing, and they're like, "Oh my god, we can do anything!" And like, I've watched so many things in the past 6 months where people are just like, "Due to CRISPR, we can now make superheroes." So that's what they do. It's done by CRISPR. So I will say as well, whenever the monkey or the gorilla was flipping him off, and there was like just comedy everywhere, Ema did say to me, "Is this not another monster movie?" she thought it was actually not another monster movie. She didn't think it was actually a real film. So
I find it funny that you've mentioned this idea of like Hollywood, like basically some production company executive finding out about an idea and then just forcing it into every movie they can, because there's going to be another movie that I think we're probably going to talk about in a second where I feel like this exact same thing has happened. But yeah, I have seen Rampage, but to be honest, I don't remember that much about it. I remember them having a big fight through a city in the end.
It ends like most monster movies. Like they're trying to catch the monster. Yeah. Basically, there's a rich brother and sister who run the company. They don't want to lose their assets, so what they do is they put, and like the only part of the pathogen that exists anymore is inside these animals. So what they do is they put apparently in the pathogen, they've also included that they can hear a particular frequency and are attracted to that frequency. So on top of their skyscraper in Chicago, they emit a frequency that makes all these 3 animals go towards Chicago. And I will say, like, the design of the alligator in particular, because it doesn't just alter their size, it actually adds in some stuff from other animals too. So like the crocodile itself has like really like spiny, like a spiny thing going on. I'm not going to get into all the different things. You have to watch because they do get revealed as it goes. But eventually they end up in Chicago. They wreck everything. Naomi Harris's character has to get something that they can inject these animals with, in order to, I suppose, would you call it a vaccine? I don't know what you would call it, but they have to create something to neutralize this pathogen.
Yeah, I don't think they put that much thought into it. It's just a thing that they inject.
Yeah, exactly.
Anti-CRISPR drugs.
Yeah, exactly. What I thought was hilarious is the whole thing is just George going mental, killing people, and the Rock, right? The Rock the whole time is just being like, but he's a good guy. We need to save him. We can't just kill him. We need to save him. He's killing more people. He's literally bloody ripping people's heads off. And then the Rock like, he literally grabs a rock and starts smacking people's heads in. And the Rock's still like, we gotta save him. We gotta save him.
it's like a Harambe memorial movie. Just
Literally, Ema and I were
shoot
joking.
gorillas.
Ema and I were joking about that as well. The Harambe the whole time. We were joking about it the whole time. But yeah, I will say as well, Joe Manganiello is in it.
Yeah,
Joe
I know.
Manganiello.
I remember. Yeah, like I was watching him on a Dungeons and Dragons podcast not 2 weeks ago.
That's why I was
fun.
interested in the fact that he was in it, because I was literally watching like the YouTube video where he gives you a tour of his own little Dungeons and Dragons room in his house.
Yeah, Joe Manganiello. Well, he's not. I was going to say he's a secret nerd. He's not even that secret about it. He's just a nerd.
In fact, actually, it's
Hollywood
like
guy.
as a celebrity in the distance, it's pretty cool. It seems like a guy who would be pretty in your face about a lot of stuff. Like he's like, hey, like Dungeons and Dragons, I'm the place to go in Hollywood. It's me, you know. It's like, all right, like I can imagine, like if I was a big like actor in Hollywood, I'd be like, yeah, but I kind of want to play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. It's like, no, you got to play with the Big Show. You got to play with Sting. You know, it's like, no.
Listen to me, Steve Buscemi. You're going to come around to my house and we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, you bitch.
Yeah. I just want to play with my friends, Joe. I just want to play with my friends.
Flips a table over.
But also, I did see that in his Dungeons and Dragons group, David and Dan, who made Game of Thrones, are in it. I'm like, nah.
Yeah, it's a bad group.
They got in before season 8, so you know, they got in before they were excommunicated from the industry.
Could be kicked out after that. That's a shame.
Yeah, but Rampage. I will say that at the end there is a joke at the end, which people said that the joke in Kingsman at the end was too much, and it took the wind out of the sails of that film. Let me just say, I am going to spoil this, because I think it's funny.
It's not that much to spoil, to be honest.
It's not that much to spoil. But if you do want to watch Rampage and you don't want this joke spoiled for you, then skip this next 30 seconds, because it will only be that long. Anyway, okay, so at the very end of the film, George plays dead. He wakes up again. The Rock introduces him to his new friend, Naomi Harris, and George proceeds to take his index finger. I'm not going to do it. Take his index finger. I'll do it off camera. Take his other hand, make a circle with his thumb and index finger, and put the finger in the hole. George the gorilla does this, and it was really weird. Let me just say, it was really weird, and it was a great. I enjoyed the monster film for what it was. You know, for what it was. It was very silly, but at the end I was like, what? I left the film like, this is not another monster movie. Ema was right.
I mean, it's not a. It doesn't have. I don't think it really has a good sense of what kind of tone it wants to strike, as evidenced by that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool.
One more.
Yeah. So I think I know which one this is going to be. Is your last one in 2018 by any chance The Meg?
Oh, you know it is.
Yeah.
The
only reason I wanted to mention this was because I feel like, talking about CRISPR, I feel like around the early 2010s, someone in Hollywood heard about the concept of a megalodon, and it subsequently became like the monster that they stuffed into every monster movie ever made after that, which gave us like a bunch of like mega shark movies. I feel like Sharknado probably has a megalodon in it at some point. Obviously this didn't start that, and I don't blame it for doing it, because I think this is actually one of the better movies or certainly compared to like the mega shark movies, those things are trash. But it's such a weird idea. It's so weird that this idea of a massive shark was so latched onto by Hollywood.
Yeah, like maybe it's because like trying to get some of that Jaws cred, but overall,
Jaws but bigger.
Yeah, I expected, to be honest with you, based on like Jason Statham, and I expected to enjoy the Meg less than I did Rampage.
Yeah.
But I actually think it comes out either head to head, or maybe the Meg for me was a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or in terms of my enjoyment.
Okay.
And it maybe all comes down to one moment, which I'm not going to spoil for anyone who wants to watch it. But there's a moment about 45 minutes in where something very predictable but not predictable happens at the same time. And I'm not saying any more than that, but they got us. They got us a little bit there. And I found
anything.
Huh?
I'm not going to say anything about it. I can't I actually, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure I remember the bit you're talking about, but it's.
I'll tell you off air.
trying to remember the movie I was speaking about now. But yeah, I mean, it's that I think that the Meg is a weird movie because it's like there is some craft to it, and it actually has like quite a good cast, and it's like there's like a good movie trying to get out of this, and I feel like it's kind of confined by its B movie kind of subgenre trappings a little bit. But I still enjoyed it. I thought the Meg, like the monster design is fine. And yeah, I think if the thing you're talking about is what I think you're talking about, it's very well trodden ground for all monster movies, where it's sort of like, oh, okay, how do we up the ante for the second half of this movie? Oh, okay, fine, that's how you're gonna do it. Okay.
Although no, I think we're talking about a slightly different thing.
Oh, okay, fine.
But the bit you're talking about, yes, I did think like that bit they did get me for a second. I'm gonna be honest, they got me for a second. The bit I'm talking about, I'm going to sort of not spoil but go into a little more detail, involves Rainn Wilson's character lying.
I don't remember that at all. I barely remember Rainn Wilson's character in that movie, though, to be honest. I was just looking it up on IMDb, and I was like, I don't remember Rainn Wilson being.
So Rainn Wilson played the billionaire who was funding the research below the cloud in in the ocean. Yeah. I was more interested in the giant squid. At the start, there was a giant squid, and I was like, well, why that could be the bad guy?
That'll be the sequel.
Yeah, I'll say, actually, I didn't rate them, but I'll say Rampage probably gets a 7. Like, they destroy Chicago. Like, they destroy a lot of Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago's not great.
Yeah. The Meg, to be honest with you, the Meg actually, being a shark, it can never really get onto land.
No, and to be honest, even as a big shark, it's very limited in what it can do.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 3 or 4 for the Meg.
It does more than Jaws.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say for it.
It does more than Jaws. Well, it's like 100 times bigger than Jaws. It has to do more.
Well, I feel like that's exactly why people made movies with megalodons in them, because they're like, what if Jaws was 100 times the size?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know that bit where Roy Scheider says we're going to need a bigger boat? Well, get a load of this shit, and then
we're going to need a bigger shark.
Yeah, we're going to need a bigger ocean.
And also, I am an Australian, so probably my pupils would yell at me if I didn't say this. There's a shark in the water.
What is that from?
I have no idea, but ever since I moved to Ireland when I was 12, I've been asked to say that at least twice a week.
I don't know what that's from. That's like an Australian thing. I assume it's Crocodile Dundee or.
That's not a knife. That's a Crocodile Dundee. That's not a knife.
Is Free Willy Australian? I can't remember.
Free Willy's not Australian, but it is amazing.
We should have.
It's amazing, so therefore it is Australian at heart. But
that's a monster movie.
I was thinking of saying that, to be honest. I honestly was, but it's only really.
Orca. We could have done Orca. They made a horror movie.
That's true.
In the ilk of Jaws, because they were like, shit, we need some of that Jaws money. What about, I don't know, killer whales?
Yeah, I will say about Free Willy, if you took the film from the start to the point where you see the orca through the window, and then you stopped it there, you could have written the rest as a monster movie if you wanted. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. They got to a point where they had to decide what kind of movie they were going to make, and one might say they made the wrong choice.
Oh, I love that film.
I haven't seen it since I was like 6 years old.
Some people love blues music, and that's why they start playing the harmonica. Not me.
Is Elijah Wood in that movie?
No, it's not Elijah Wood. It's
I can't remember the kid.
I don't even know his name. He's just a child actor. I never actually saw him in anything when he was growing up.
Okay, well, that's something to look forward to in the future, is when we discuss movies about killer whales, because Anthony will definitely plump for that at some point.
Favorite movie. Although we can talk about the documentary Blackfish technically there too. So
yeah, we can do. Yeah. Well, stay tuned, listeners, because maybe that'll come up. But yeah, so I think I can't remember if we said something for the Meg. Oh, you said like 3 or 4, didn't we?
3 or 4, yeah.
Fine. Okay, so there we go. We've got our rating system well established, peer reviewed. It's all above board, and you're welcome, listener, for this objective. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. This establishment of how threatening these monsters are. I guess.
It was great doing it for you. It's a service for the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we can move on.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I think that's that. Unless Andy, you have anything else to add, I think that's going to bring us to the end of our.
No, that's all the ones I had.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for us here on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, which really leaves us with only one simple question to answer, and that is, Anthony, what is your favourite movie?
I'm going to surprise you this week by giving a sensible answer. It was King Kong 1933.
It's a solid shout. It was a great movie. I like more movies with big monkeys than them. That's my stance. My favorite movie does not have a big monkey in it, but it does have a Hydra. That's Jason and the Argonauts. Go check that out if you want to see some men in skirts fighting skeletons. Tune in. They're not skirts. It's a tabard. That's very childish of me. Tune in next week where we're going to be doing our movie diary, a return to that. We'll talk about what we've seen since the last time we have done one of those. So it'll be 2 weeks worth of movies, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can find links to their stuff down in the link below on YouTube. And as I said before, share the show with your friends, get involved in the comments, shoot us a like. It really does help. Thanks so much for listening. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.